Today is a holy day. Like Christmas, but unlike Christmas that lends itself to songs and poetry and beauty of the image of God, today is not that day. The crosses that we hang around our necks all year, that we hang on our walls, that we paint in pictures and place in our homes, maybe because they have to mask the grotesque reality that is Good Friday. Today we are left with a vivid, no-holds-barred picture of our condition and who we are and who Christ is. We are proved on Good Friday to be cowards, mockers, haters, violent people. We are proved around the fire to be cowards who will have nothing to do with this crucified Messiah. When the King has come in his glory, it is with a crown of thorns as we mock and slap him. And when he is lifted up, we are nowhere to be found after we have gathered as a crowd of religious people who have accused him of worthy of death. And if the crowd ever has to choose, we have proven we will always choose Barabbas, not this Christ. Our hearts are laid bare on Good Friday. The same hearts that many times say, if God would just come nearer to me, if God would just give me a fuller picture of who he is, if God would just do for me, then I would follow him. Then I would be that Christian I've always wanted to be. Then I would be the person. And today's the one day a year that we have to admit that that's just not true. There are a group of people who pray more than we do, who pray 7 times a day and live their life of prayer and repentance and in glory. Monks at abbeys, monasteries, and they sing the book of the Psalms year after year, over and over the same thing, to the same tune. They will sing the Psalter. They will say the Psalter is the monk's book. The human heart has never been as fully laid bare there. It's to that kind of crying that we give voice to today. It's that heart that we see laid out. We also get a picture of who Christ is today. On Good Friday, we can't make God just a religion so that we can interact with him by having the same thoughts and feelings. We can't make him some ideal that we can get to just by striving, seeking inside of ourselves. We can't really make him into anything because he is a broken, bleeding man on a cross. That's who God is today. Today we are cowards, we are haters, we are mockers. And we put him on that cross. And we give voice to the mocking. Let God save you. All hail you, King of the Jews. As we divide his clothes for the spoil. Because we won't even let God die like God should die. We take the dignity away from it all. And it's in the midst of this picture that we get a very clear picture of who Christ even still is. The only phrase in more than one of the Gospels that we know Christ says from the cross comes from the Psalms. It speaks a lot about who God is and how he dies. Hear from Psalm 22 tonight. From the NRSV I'll be reading. Or no, I'll read your version. my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from the words of my groaning? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the praise of Israel. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried to you and were saved. In you they trusted and they weren't disappointed. But I'm a worm, not a human being. I am scorned by everyone. I'm despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. That's the word of the Lord. On that day, we were afraid and we mocked. And on that day, Christ was Christ. It's not only that God came down and lived as man, but on Good Friday, God comes down not only to die, but to die a criminal's death. A death that finds its voice in the very heart of human suffering. Christ dies like the godless. Christ dies like a murderer. Christ dies like one that we have no time for. Christ dies like one for whom we would say there is no salvation. We mocked and we cowered. And we were who we were. And we still are today. We still play the crowd of Good Friday every time we refuse to serve the neighbor. Every time we refuse to love others more than ourselves. Every time we continue to walk down a path that is not the one Christ has laid out, has lived out. We live on Good Friday a lot more than we should. Yet even in the midst of this, Christ remains his message. Even in the midst of his own pain and suffering. He is the God who refuses to speak up for himself. He is the God who is slapped in the face and refuses to hit us back. He is the God who is mocked and flogged, but still remains. He's the God who, as he is on the cross bleeding out, he still prays for forgiveness for those that need it most. On Good Friday, there can be no doubt about who this Christ really is. A broken, bleeding man, a defeated human being, dying despised, without his closest friends, betrayed by the people he came to save. And yet still, he speaks from the cross about being engrossed in human life, thirsting, asking for forgiveness, crying out to God. He dies only as Christ could die. And maybe for the few in the crowd that hoped God really would save him, that hoped that there would be an inbreaking of angels, that hoped that Christ could bring himself down from the cross that this is all a bad dream, that Christ really wouldn't let himself go that low, that he really wouldn't let us push him away, that he could find the power to step down from this fate we had brought upon him. And there were a few that remained in hope, the hope we have today. But it's right at that moment where all the mocking is done and the cowards are forgotten and there's only God and us. And right at the ending of the movie, right when the hero should make the comeback, right when we all know this won't last, that God's in control, that Christ is still here, he dies. The light has shined in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. Not today. And at that moment, we have to face the reality that God is not here. He is dead.